All right. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Susanna Quinn. I run the leagues in Southern Connecticut. We have these meetings twice a year, the first time before our fall winter leagues begin, and then we have another one in February ahead of our spring and summer leagues. And I was mentioning to Christy, apologize in advance for those of you who are Serena fans. We will run this along pretty quickly. We know she's playing at 7, so hopefully this won't really take long, especially for some of you more seasoned captains who've been through this before. On a call with us today are Christy Bennett, who's the Director of Leagues based in Massachusetts, John Pagano, who's our State League Committee Chair, so everything league related in Connecticut, he gets involved in. We have the luxury of having our own Rules Committee chairperson, and that's Andrew Taylor, and his part will be pretty big in this meeting because he worked very hard to try to standardize some of the regulations between Northern, Eastern, and Southern Connecticut. For those of you who have cross-border teams who have to familiarize yourselves with the different regulations in the different parts of Connecticut, hopefully this will get easier after starting with the season. And he'll spend a little bit of time talking about that towards the end. And so Christy will just talk about a couple of general developments and some championship information. John will say a few words about his role. I will go through some housekeeping for leagues, and then Andrew will go over the regulation, the big regulation change. And then what we typically do is we open it up for questions. And if you have a question, you can just type it in the chat, and we will just address it as we go on, if that works for everyone. So yeah, so Christy, if you wouldn't mind just kind of throwing a couple of things out about the championships and the new regulation about ratings, I think those are probably the two main things to discuss.
Yeah, so hi everybody, thank you guys for being on. And somebody had Serena in the background. If they could just turn their TV a little closer this way, we could all watch at the same time. Yeah, so we, we're almost done with championships for 2022. We've got the 55s, the 65s, and the mixed 55s left, but so far, everything, players and captains have been just really fantastic. We've learned a lot. We've taken in a lot of information, and so we're going to try to make the experience better for everybody next year and all of them. The one thing that we do want to reiterate, even as COVID is continuing to sort of linger around the edges, as far as the league and the championships are concerned, the Section League Committee has made the decision that there will be no waivers. There's not going to be any give for COVID reasons. And so rescheduling and dropping out of championships and all of that we're going back to the 2019 pre-COVID rules. We're pretty close to that this year. So just know that next year with the regulations for the local leagues are super strict according to what the regulations say, with no COVID interventions at all so far. So hopefully we'll get rid of COVID eventually, but I think it might just be with us forever, like the flu and really terrible colds and things that we don't know much about these days. But and then the new regulation for the section level, it's 12.2.2. For those of you that are familiar with our seasoned captains, you know that at the end, when year-end ratings are run, which is typically December 1st, right around that time, any person that's on your team that is bumped up can only play on your team for 10 more days, and then they can also file an appeal, but they then have to move up. They can no longer play on your team. So that regulation has changed. The player can now play through the end of the season. They cannot play in district or section championships, but if they roster as a 3-5 and they get bumped to a 4-0, they can continue to play as a 3-5 until the league that they're currently registered on ends. This is for the early start leagues. Anything that starts prior to year-end ratings will go with that, whether it's mixed, gender-based, whatever it happens to be. So we're working on an FAQ that's going to be kind of a living document. So as we get questions from everybody, we can answer them and put it out there so that everybody can see them. Mix, if you're a 3-0 playing on a 7-0 team and you get bumped to a 3-5, you can still play as a 3-0. Then if you go to districts, you have to play as a 3-5. So just those are the kind of combinations that we'll have to be really careful of. And hopefully that's going to make it easier to keep teams together and keep friendships and groups that start together to stay together until the end of the season. Yeah, from the section level, we were having a lot of teams that were having to dissipate. They were having trouble filling rosters after year-end ratings happen, and it was really disruptive for the social community. And we checked with all the other sections to see where we landed. We were one of the only sections that didn't allow play all the way through local league. Most of them actually also go all the way through section and championships. And so we wanted to make the change and see if it would help the captains do their jobs and keep their players together throughout the season. So it's a big change. Does anybody have any other questions about it?
We don't have a roster limit. The only limit we have, Beth, is an out of level limit. So if you have a 3-5 team, you can have up to 4 3-0 players signed up, but we don't have a roster limit.
That is a question that Rhode Island's going to have to answer, though. So I'm going to have to work on that one.
Just a quick clarification, only because it came up. If you appeal your rating and your rating moves up as a result of your appeal, then you're basically saying I am way out of level. And then you may not continue to play at your old rating. You will have to live by your new rating if that's what you have chosen to do.
That is true, yes. And the only other exception will be National does have some standards for whether you're double bumped or considered playing considerably out of level or considerably into the next level. And those are based on percentages. So they will send us a list. It's usually a very, very small list of somebody who gets bumped up and is considerably in that level. They will also not be allowed to play longer than the 10 days, but it's usually in the whole section, less than 5 people.
And one other thing that also came up, I'm sorry, Christy, if you mentioned it, I missed it. If let's say you're a 3-5 and you're playing on a mixed 7-0 team, if you get bumped up, you may not go to championships as a 3-5. However, you can go and play as a 4. As a whatever your new higher rating. So you can play at your new higher level at championships, but not at your old level.
As long as the combined rating still equals 7-0 and you're not more than a point apart, yes. Mm-hmm. I thought I saw another question in the chat too. What's that one?
Yeah, so it's from Tori. Just to clarify, appealed players can only play for the 10 days as before, or as your appeal right away, Christy?
So if you're an appeal player and you get bumped up, so all the ratings, whatever you roster as, if you roster as an appealed player, you can continue to play. The appeal part is if within that 10 days, you decide I'm a 3-5, but I'm going to appeal up within that 10 days and you go up, then you would not be able to. But if you roster as an appealed player, you are considered whatever that rating is, no matter what the letter behind it is. Can you add more 3-0 players to a team if someone moves up to 3-5? So that's going to be a local area regulation. We might have to talk through that one with Andrew because you still are technically on that roster as a 3-0. So you couldn't add any more out of level players if you've hit the max.
It's going to be tough to monitor too. Who was a 3-0 when he registered and became a 3-5, but is still a 3-0 for the purposes of. I think we kind of have to make a call. Are you a 3-0 or a 3-5? And
I do think just not changing the roster, not changing the rating on the rosters, just leaving them as they are for those players will, and that way we know that that's what it is when you pull up the roster, so that it's changed. Hopefully it's a lot less changing for you at the 10-day mark.
Yeah, the only changes would be for people who are significantly out of level.
Yeah.
Right. Or appeal up and are successful. Other than that, they would remain on the roster.
They would remain just like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Justin Rosen. Oh, sorry, that was a direct. We still haven't completed our form, but plan on completing it this week. We're working to finalize. No, that's fine. We have, Justin, if you're listening, our 18 and over Women's Day League is the team registration is completed, as is the tri-level and combo. For 40 and over and mixed 18 and over, it's still open until Tuesday of next week. So just get in touch with me by then and that'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll reach out to you tomorrow or Friday.
Okay, so does anybody have any other questions? If a person gets up for 4-5 as one of the 4-0. Hold on, sorry. I can't read and talk at the same time. Gets bumped up on a 4-5 team as one of the 4-0 players. Can we add another? Yeah, right, because if there's no roster limits, you can continue to add players until whatever the end date is for adding players. You're muted, huh?
This is the same question as before, right? So because we have a limit on out of level players at 4 players who are below level. And I think what they're saying is if one of those players gets bumped up, do we get to add another one at the below level?
No, because they're still considered, whatever they rostered as is what they are considered throughout the season until the season ends.
Yeah, I think we'll have to make that clarification because it's really big in Southern Connecticut.
Okay.
And we're kind of still figuring out this new regulation, just and these are tiny little nuances for each area. So that's a good one. There's no end date for adding players. You can add for the last match, even understanding that if your team goes to championships, clearly they won't have enough matches to play championships. But you know, if you're in a jam, your last match, you want to add a player, you can add a player. So Dana, same answer, Dana and Amy.
Sorry, Susanna, I got a little distracted. I got like bumped off. I want to ask you a question. So if a person gets bumped up to 4-5 on a 4-5 team, can I add another? We're only allowed to have 4 4.0 team players on a 4.5 team. Can I add an additional 4.0 team player if that person gets bumped up?
I think we're saying no. Andrew, what's your read of the new regulation?
Yeah, we haven't totally addressed that point, but I would say no, because the practically speaking, the intention is to keep that player marked on the roster as a 4-0. Although if you go to their individual record, there'll be a 4-5. So as they were rostered at that, and we're allowing them to continue to play at that, I think we have to say no. They're still involved. They're still part of that 4-player cap until.
Okay, so that makes it a little complicated. So I also have a tri-level team, and so if that person gets bumped up to 4-5, can they play the line 4-5 now that they're bumped up to 4-5?
The ratings come up after tri-level is over, so that doesn't really affect tri-level. But on the out of level thing, now that I'm thinking about the out of level, if you're a 3-0 playing up on a 3-5, you move up to a 3-5, you're still playing within that team as a 3-5. So I think it would make sense that in those instances where they move up, or they're the below level player and they move up to the next level, let's say they're a 3-0 playing up, move up to 3-5, those we change on a roster and open up room for another below level player. Because they're not exiting the team, they're still on the team, but now is a 3-5, right?
The difficulty is how we'll have to think about this, because the difficulty is how we monitor that. Having said that, Tennis Link will keep them as a 3-0. So, for instance, if the opposing captain looks at the team lineup, we don't want to say, wait a minute, they've got 6 players who are below level. That's not allowed. So we've just got to think out the practicalities of that.
I think that as a captain that you would keep track of it. And since it's like such a stringent rule of, you know, a Connecticut rule as opposed to a New York rule, which has different regulations, I think it would behoove us to like allow another 4.0 player to come on as they become a 4-5. So it might be something to think about.
Do you want to, Christine, Andrew, do we want to discuss this offline? I don't see any downside for those below level players who get promoted effectively to change those few instances and open up room for another player to take their spot. I know it's a big constraint in Southern Connecticut, but maybe you can discuss it offline and go back to all the captains. How do we feel about that?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's right. We've got a couple of months anyway, so we'll sort that out.
I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
Dana, the minimum number of matches to play in districts, you need 2, and one of those may be a forfeit. Okay.
Keep in mind, though, we did have this come up a little bit. That is the section rule for nationals. You have to have if you're a computer rated player or an appeal rated player, you have to have 3 matches and 1 can be a default. But if you're self-rated going to nationals, you have to have 4 matches on that team. The 4 matches can be a combination of local, district, and section. It can be all local, whatever it happens to be. But if you're self-rated going to nationals, you have to have 4 matches actually played. So when you guys are creating your teams and your rosters and putting them together, be aware of who's self-rated and who might not have had enough matches to get a year-end rating throughout, through the end of the year. And that way you'll not be surprised at the end when you get, if you make it to a national team.
Okay, there's nothing else, right, Christy? Is there anything worth mentioning before we move on to John?
No, I think that's it on my end. If anybody, has any other questions, and we'll definitely talk about this one offline, the one that came up, and let us know, because we want to make sure that everybody's really prepared. And there will be an email going out to all players in the entire section tomorrow from our marketing department about this regulation. It'll have attached to it the 2023 regulations as they stand. So you might get questions from your players after the email out tomorrow.
Okay, thanks. Super. John, did you want to say a few things about what you do in the meetings and then mention our event coming up?
So sure. So first, I want to say welcome everybody to the 2023 season. I can't believe it's already here, but
John, I'm sorry, the sound is so bad.
is it? Let me try my computer.
Is that any better? No, I can't hear.
Much better.
The
Yeah.
headphones, the headphones was the
So
issue.
I gotta go to Apple. So anyway, welcome everybody. The 2023 season is upon us. Pretty much what we do is I work with, we're trying to make the experience for the captains and the players a little bit better. So as Susanna and Christy had mentioned, Andrew's committee has actually done most of the legwork this year, but trying to understand, take feedback, work with different captains, work with the coordinators to see what could make it better. So actually Andrew's doing most of the heavy lifting this you'll see on this call, but that's generally it. It's basically just to appreciate everything we do as captains and to kind of promote tennis. I work with all 3 sections. So there's Northern, Southern, and Eastern Connecticut. One of the things this year that we're doing is the captain appreciation event, because over the last few years, it has been challenging to say the least, working through COVID and working through a lot of different things with different clubs. So we thought having a party kind of event, a social event for the captains would be nice. So I did one in Eastern. The one for Southern Connecticut's going to be at the Tennis Club of Trumbull. It's September 10th. You should have received an email from Susanna on that. So if you do plan on coming, just reply back to that. You can come and hang out, or you can come and play. We're going to be doing a social event. We mixed regular, same-sex doubles. But whatever you feel like, you can come and hang out with us. But that's basically it as far as organizing and trying to promote the growth of tennis in our area and kind of keep Connecticut going. So that was it. With that, I want to move back. Oh, I'll go back to Susanna because you have another list to go through.
Yes.
But
I'm the MC. For those of you who are brand new captains, since I sent out the party note and you did not get my invite because you were not captains at the time, just drop me an email and I'll forward you the Jot form registration link if you're able to make it and would like to attend. A few housekeeping items. Again, if you follow along the agenda, I'm going to kind of look aside. As you know, at year end, and I'm repeating this just because we have a lot of new captains and captains always ask about this. At year end, we do a calculation of our new computer ratings. So typically at the end of October, the system gets locked down where all the matches you've played in the 12 months prior to that. That's kind of the line in the sand. We use the month of November to churn through the ratings and to see who moves up, who moves down, who stays the same, who goes from a self-rated player to a computer-rated player. So all of that happens. And typically right after Thanksgiving, the new ratings are published and you'll get, typically there's an email that goes out from UST that notifies you that that's happened. And at that time, you have the option to appeal your rating, and you do that right within Tennis Link in the upper right-hand corner where you have your account management information. You can appeal that. And this has come up several times, and maybe just for you to know and to disseminate to your teams, The appeal function is not a live function. So you can't go play a good match and then go and appeal and see what happens. So the appeal will always look back to that last time that rating, the dynamic ratings were run and officially set at the end of October and published right after Thanksgiving. So if you appeal, you play 10 amazing matches, you appeal 10 times, you're going to get the same answer because it's just going to look back at that line in the sand. Just really think of it as you're in college, you take one grade test, you're not going to get an A for the class or a B for the class. You need to demonstrate consistency throughout the year, that's the level where you're performing, and then you'll move up or down accordingly. And also just really more for team management, as captains, you can imagine the carnival you would have on your hands if people moved in and out of level and, fail to notify you that they moved up to 4-0, they're really 3-5, and they play a match and your other captain notices it and you have a forfeit on your hands. So just so you know, appeal is not a live function, so you have a chance to do it, and really the best time to do it is right after the ratings are published so that you have fresh information to know if you're close enough to move up or move down, whatever your preference is. So that will be happening, that's on schedule. A couple of tiny changes. As we're doing major cleanup, for some strange reason, our tri-level, for those of you who have tri-level teams in the past, for some reason, they were set up as match wins. So if you have a 3-court format, if you won 2 out of the 3 courts, you got 1 point, kind of similar to what happens in districts and sectionals, whereas every other format that we run in Southern Connecticut is based on points per position. So if you play 3 courts, you win 2, and the other team wins 1, you get 2 points, they get 1 point. So we really aligned tri-level to be the same as all of our other Southern Connecticut formats. So that's the one thing you will see if you have a tri-level team and you're looking at standings. So that's one change you will see. In mix, for those of you who have mixed teams, and this is something I ran by the captains and everybody seemed to like it. In the past, our mixed 18 and over, the way we run this is in the fall and winter season, we run mixed 18 and over, and it typically ends in the spring. And then we pick it back up with 40 and over, mixed 40 and over, and that goes for spring through summer. 18 over is a little bigger than 40 and over, but not that much bigger. And typically a longer season. We were finding that it was just really not leaving us a lot of room for the 40 and over. So we shifted the seasons a little bit. So before 18 and over was 22 weeks, 40 and over was 13 weeks. Now just shifted 3 weeks from one to the other. So it'll be like 19 and 16. So just a little bit, it'll give you some breathing room in the spring and summer to reschedule any matches you wanted to reschedule. Again, this is for the mixed teams. Those of you who don't know much about mixed, are mixed 18 and over and 40 and over, there's really quite a bit of overlap between those two. A lot of it is the same players, same captains, probably like 80-85% overlap. So we can't really run them concurrently, which is why we end one and pick it back up with the other. So the captains are aware, they like it, things are good. The other item is the 55 and over season. I know it's always been kind of jammed where we would pick it back up where 40 and over ended in early March. So then in mid-March, we pick it back up with 55 and over, just because, there's a bit of overlap in players. And then we ended it around Memorial Weekend, just because of how sectionals for 55 and over were scheduled. It looks like the 55 and over sectionals are actually now in September, right, Christy? They were shifted to September. So there's really no urgency to finish it around Memorial Weekend. So I'm going to push it out by another month and end it at the end of June. So those of you who play 55 and over, you're not going to be terribly jammed to play it in 2 months. We'll have an extra month to wrap up your season and have a nice Memorial Weekend. That's about it. One of the files I attached is a PDF of our important timeline dates and deadlines. I think most of them have passed, but in case you're wondering, when is the schedule going to be published for my 40 and over teams, you can look at that PDF and just see all the information's on there. I try to really put everything on there that you may want to know, so you can just easily locate it. So that's all I have. The easy reference sheet and match ending rules will be the big portion of this discussion, and Andrew will eloquently take us through it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. for those who don't know me, I'm Andrew Taylor. I am a member of the State League Committee, which John chairs, but I also chair a regulations subcommittee. And what we did a couple of years ago, we decided we should have a regulations committee that covered all three areas of Connecticut, particularly as we have a lot of teams playing across the line. So I chair that committee. It's a 6-person committee, and we have 2 representatives from each of the local areas. We don't make ultimate decisions. We make recommendations to the Connecticut League Committee, and they have the final vote. On the regulations side, for Southern Connecticut, there really is only one change this year, but it's a big one. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Just before I do, a little aside, those of you who are basically Southern Connecticut captains, but have captained teams sometimes in Eastern Connecticut League, have come across the unusual rule they had there that the home team paid for both the away and the home team's match fees. It got very complicated for reasons you well know. You'll be glad to know that has now been changed. Eastern Connecticut are going to be on the same basis as everyone else. And if you show up to pay a match at one of their clubs, you will just pay the home decks the same as you do for Southern Connecticut. On that, we did have one issue this year with a club that decided they wanted to do it differently, and they wanted captains to pay the match fees 2 days in advance. We quickly told them, no, that's not the way it works in Southern Connecticut. The rules spell it out. So just wanted you all to know that if you're asked to do anything different from what's in the regulations, contact Susanna and we'll get it straightened out with the club. Okay, on to the big rule change is going to be to the match ending procedure, or I should say the timed match ending procedure after 2 hours. We needed to look at this because the match ending procedures in use were somewhat complicated and also varied a lot through the different areas in Connecticut. We spent many months looking at the alternatives in use and going to look at other areas of the country. And the main aims we had were really as follows. We wanted a simple procedure to follow and implement. Quite a lot of disputes tend to arise over match ending procedures in local areas. And although Southern Connecticut's was a little simpler than the other 2, it's still probably a little more complex than it needed to be. So we wanted a standardized procedure that we could use right through. We wanted to avoid any on-court reviews of the regulations or discussions being required, because number one, they take up time, and number 2, they lead to disputes. We certainly wanted as much as we can to discourage time wasting in order to reach a certain point. It's difficult to totally eliminate, but I think our aim was to be able to minimize that. We also wanted people to be able to play for the full 2 hours, but then it was very important at the 2-hour mark to be able to clear the court. We have a number of clubs where the time pressures are such that it is not just a case of getting to the 2 hours, but you really don't have that extra couple of minutes to start playing deciding points. I've played in a match actually at one of the Stamford clubs where once we got to the end of the 2 hours, our court was suddenly full of juniors. So it would have been impossible to continue on. So we wanted to play the full 2 hours, but then to have a procedure that will clear the court. We wanted it to be obviously seen as fair to both winners and losers, and also adhere closely to how tennis is supposed to be scored. Now, that last one is an important point because both our regulations in Southern Connecticut and the ones used elsewhere allowed a situation where, let's say, Team A won the first set, Team B could come back. Let's say you couldn't complete the second set before the 2 hours was up. Team B, who didn't win the first set, could end up as a match winner, either by winning a couple of deciding points or by the counting games system that we used to use. Now, if we think about that, it's fundamentally opposed to how tennis is scored. Tennis is scored that a set win is a set win. It's once that set is over, it's in the bag. Whether you've won it 6-1 or 7-6, you've got that set in place. And there really shouldn't be a situation allowed where you as a team win the first set, the second set can't be completed, but you lose the match. That shouldn't really happen. Now, one thing that changed the approaches we could consider was that New England have moved, as have other sections of the country, to allow, under certain circumstances, a tied result. Now, before everyone says, hey, we don't like tied results, it won't be that often it happens. But for the reasons I've just mentioned, sometimes it can be fairer than the alternatives. And certainly in having a match result just hinge on one deciding point, which might depend who's serving or whatever. The tied result still gives incentive to the players because you're playing for your team, you're looking for points for the team, and a half point for a tie might make a big difference as the season goes on. So Susanna mentioned the easy reference sheet. The full regulations will be on published on the website before the season actually kicks off. But in the meantime, the easy reference sheet that was attached to Susanna's email does give the new match ending procedure, but it's fairly simple. And it goes like this. You will play for the full 2 hours. Now, captains are already supposed to agree how the 2 hours is to be measured. Most clubs have a clock, and either for the court or that's visible from the court, and you would normally use that. Once the 2 hours is up, the point in progress is finished, but then play is over. And if need be, you can vacate the court. If there are people waiting for it, you can vacate it immediately. If the match is so close that the winner is not immediately obvious, you can go to the side or go up to the lobby area. We just ask that it's the result is agreed promptly and without interference from outside, but you will be able to vacate the court, and that is quite an important point. So, okay, what happens? You finish the point in progress. First of all, does the game in progress count? It does if one team, after the final point, is 2 points ahead or has the advantage point following a deuce, then they win that game. So I'll just repeat that. If they're, say, 40-15, so they're 2 points ahead, or they hold the advantage point after the deuce. And when I say advantage point after the deuce, the reason I say that is that we're in the habit sometimes of when you get a score of 40-30, somebody will say add in. We don't mean that. We mean the proper advantage point after deuce. If you hold that, you win that team wins the game. If one team is not 2 points ahead or doesn't have the advantage point, that game doesn't count, and you reset to the score before that game. So it's actually very easy when you come to it to know which it's going to be. Then you have the set in progress. Okay, and the question is there one team that is ahead in games in the set in progress? If it's 4-3, then that team wins that set. In the event that neither team is ahead in games, then that set is tied. So if you're in the second set when that is tied, then obviously the team that won the first set will be the match winner, because in effect they've won 1.5 sets to half a set. If there is a set tiebreak in progress, it's a similar approach. If at the point where you hit the 2 hours, the set tiebreak is not complete, then a team that is 2 points ahead, which is the same as it is now, wins that tiebreak and therefore wins the set. If no team is 2 points ahead, then the tiebreak is incomplete and the set again is tied. Now that I think you'll see is fair, because it does mean if you look at the score, it's not dependent on a final point where the advantage might be to the server. You know, both sides will have served to get to that 2 points ahead. So it's a very fair way to do it. If you're in a situation where you're 1 set all and you're in a 3rd set tiebreak, then the same thing applies. Again, you will have left the court. So where was that 3rd set tiebreak when you left? If one team was 2 points or more ahead, then they won that tiebreak and therefore won the match. If neither team was 2 points ahead, then again, the match is tied. Now, when you start to think about scenarios, there aren't going to be too many situations where the tied match results. But the important thing is that this does allow us to achieve the aims that I mentioned. If you actually look at it on the card, it's very easy to follow. And you won't have to do it under pressure on the court. The play will be over. You just follow it down afterwards and you can immediately see what the match result is and how it's going to be recorded. But it eliminates any on-court disputes over it. It clears the court at the end of 2 hours. And as I mentioned, with the whole thing about who won the first set and at what point are you finishing, I think it's fairer to the teams, and most importantly of all, it follows the way that tennis is normally scored. Somebody has mentioned the usual rule is that players have to agree on a winner before leaving the court. What it will now say is that players have to agree the winner or a tied result immediately before leaving the court or immediately after leaving the court. So if the court is needed, then the result can be done immediately after you've left the court, either to the side of the court or, as I mentioned, to the lobby area. And that is reflected in the rules. I'm just going to, before I open up for any questions, let me have a quick look at the chat. Okay, I don't see any other questions on this subject. So let me just open that up for questions. Have I been clear when you also look at the easy reference chart on what the new procedure is going to be? No questions, maybe I have. I know, instinctively we don't like change, but this was important. We had a number of issues to address, and to find something that would work, that satisfied the criteria that we really needed to work under. And once we get used to it, I think we will find that this is just, it's simpler. As I mentioned, there won't be too many instances where you come to a tie, but it will be seen as fairer. Somebody just asked if there's a flow chart. I have to say, if you read through the back, I don't think you need one. It's that simple. Once you, when you look at it on the back, you've only really got 3 things to look at. First of all, what happened to the game in progress? You're either 2 points ahead or have the advantage point, or you're not. Now you move to the set. Is somebody ahead in games or not? And then your match result. If you're in a tie break, that's equally easy. So I don't think I actually sat down and tried to see if there's a flow chart, but I can't honestly make it any simpler than is written on the back of the easy reference chart. So that there wasn't ultimately much point. I just see 2 more questions in the chat. No, okay, nothing on this match ending procedure. Okay, last call. Any questions anyone wants to ask on the match ending procedure? And if I've missed anything in the chat, please, speak up now so that I can address it. Okay, you're wonderful. All I can say is thank you for being so cooperative. I think once we get used to it, we'll find it's very smooth, and you will actually pretty much know. Although we say you can get off the court to do your handshake or your COVID racket touch, whatever you do, I think you will know exactly what the position is as you leave the court under this new procedure. All right, one last look at the chat. If you haven't begun the deuce, okay, if you haven't become the deuce, the game doesn't count. Well, what you mean, the score is deuce, right? And you haven't played the next point. That's exactly right. The game doesn't count because the key is one team 2 points ahead, or do they hold the advantage point, having finished the point in play? Okay. Then I think I can leave that with you. And I would like to have feedback. I think I would like to have feedback. Let's see. But please use it. Please make sure that all your players have the easy reference card. I am going to ask, well, actually all three local coordinators, but we're just concerned with Susanna. I am going to ask her to use the player list to send it out to everyone and remind them that there is a new match ending procedure, because it is a fairly important thing and we want all players to be aware of it. So we will do that, but I wanted the captains' meetings to be over first and then before the season actually starts. Okay, if there are no other questions on the match ending procedure, are there any questions or concerns on rules issues generally you want to share?
And while you guys are thinking about that, I'll answer the question about the website. We are working with marketing right now to update all 11 websites. That's 10 local areas in the section website. It's probably not going to be before the 1st of October. I will be honest with you. So please keep it, email it out. We will do our very best to get it up before that. The section rate or the local area regulations are up on the website as of today and are current. I will work with them to get the easy reference guide updated. I'll let Susanna and the other local league coordinators know when the easy references are up. I don't know how soon that's going to be, so I apologize, but hopefully once we get some major overhauls done to each of the local area web pages, we'll have a much better and much smoother transition from year to year on getting things updated.
Yeah, just if you just take the email that I sent with the agenda and the timeline, I did attach both versions of the easy reference guide, both the card version and the one sheet version. It's the same information, but one is meant for folding, the other one is just print out as a page, and disseminate that to your players. You're welcome to do that. That has been finalized. Just to Andrew's point, I don't have access to a player list. So typically, anytime we share any of this information, I send that out to my captains. Was there a initiative to get a player list?
I'm sorry, I thought actually somebody told me, but that they might have been wrong. I thought you had a way to identify all the players in Southern Connecticut. No, okay.
No, and it's such a fluid process. People sign up every day, yeah. So it's really, once the captains are set, that's our vehicle.
Okay, in that case, we'll have to do that a little differently. Yeah. So for the captains online here, but we will also email all captains. Mm-hmm. We will remind them that it really is important that they pass on the new match ending procedure to their players.
Yeah, and that's typically what we do when we publish the schedules. We just say, hey, yeah, the matches are posted and here are the new regulations. Please be sure to follow them.
One question, is the 10-minute practice outside the 2-hour match limit? No, it's not. What we mean by the 2-hour match time is exactly as it's, we haven't changed that rule at all. You have a 2-hour time block from the start of the match, of which 10 minutes is viewed as warm-up time. The important thing is what the court reservation time is. So yeah, the 10-minute warm-up time is always included within the match time. Again, a good reason to make sure your warm-up time doesn't go over 10 minutes and you get out promptly onto the court. And Catherine, thanks for your comment. I did say we welcome feedback, and she said, be careful what you wish for, but I do mean it. We welcome feedback. All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I think whether or not you like, and I was kind of a slow on the uptake of this, I will admit. I think the biggest, positive out of this, in my opinion, is the fact that we can now have a tied match. I mean, I've won matches on a sudden death. I've lost matches on a sudden death. I've received numerous complaints about sudden death points. It's just really nobody walks away feeling good about it. And I think sometimes you were just evenly matched. And I think that's really the best development that's gonna come out of this. Is sometimes you have a great match and you walk away feeling like you each deserve half a point. So hopefully everyone will feel that way. And that's all I have. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. Christy, is there anything else, or you want to wrap it
So
up?
I did see a couple of questions. One of them was about the adult 18 and over and how it progresses. So right now, the way it works is in flights of 4 or fewer, one team will go to a district championship, and in flights of 5 or more, the top 2 teams will go. I will let you guys know right now, we're working on a data project with National, because the way the districts have been set up since I started, the Connecticut district is bigger than any of the other 3 districts, and it created kind of a disparity this year, and a little bit of it was just really difficult to run because there was so much difference in the sizes in the local areas. So I'm working on a data project. We're trying to figure out a much better experience for captains, for players when it comes to the district championships and how we get you there. So stay tuned for that. Winners of each district go to a section championship. The winner of the section championship goes to nationals. So it just kind of progressively gets a little bit smaller. And then somebody asked a question about the 55s. Were you asking about this year's 55s or 2023's 55s?
Yeah, I'm asking about this year's. It's supposed to be on the 16th, and we don't know when the matches are. And my team just keeps wanting to know when our matches are so they can plan whether they're working or not.
So, yeah, so that schedule typically comes out 12 to 14 days before the championship. It's just like all the rest of the championships. We have to wait till all the local areas are complete before we can put a schedule together, because we don't know who's accepted, who's coming, and how many. We know how many teams we're going to have. So we will have.
So is there typically a Friday play, or should
there
they
will
just...
definitely be Friday play this year?
Okay.
Yes. And I will try to get that schedule out sooner rather than later. I know it's really difficult to plan. But we just have to wait till all the local areas play the 55s at a little bit different time frame.
Thank you.
Okay, can a 3-0 player on a 3-0 team ever move up to 3-5, or does a 3-0 player need to play on a 3-5 team?
No, you can move up without playing up. Is that yeah, I feel like the whole ratings thing is a really big ball of confusion. A lot of, and I get a lot of questions like these from players, from captains. I won every single match I played. Why didn't I move up? And so lost half her matches and she moved up. It's basically how well you do against your opponents, right? So every player you play has a dynamic rating. So it's basically doing well, better than expected, than the algorithm expects you to do against your opponent. So you may win every match, but if the thinking is that you were supposed to win every match, it may not be accretive to your rating. Similarly, you could lose every match, right? You could lose against Rafa Nadal and move up in your ratings because you were expected to be double bagel. So it's really, you have to play very well and do better than expected to move up, and you don't have to play up on the next level team to get a bump in your ratings. I hope that answers your question.
There was, okay, with the new timeout procedures, is there any difference in to the dynamic rating for a tie versus the old system of a winner and a loser? Again, it's not based on winning and losing, so the dynamics will still be calculated so dynamics are calculated as long as a match plays 6 games. So even if you play 6 games and somebody retires, there's a dynamic rating that's calculated. If you play 5 games and somebody retires, they get hurt, they get injured, there's no dynamic rating. So as long as you play more than 6 games, your dynamic rating will be calculated.
And Mila asked the question, just to make sure, if Team A wins the first set 7-6 and Team B is up in the second set, you gave the instance of 2-1, at the 2 hours, the match is tied. Yes, that is correct. Now, in actual fact, we hope that second set will be a little further than 2-1 in, but that is correct. The match would be tied.
That'd be a really tight game for 1 set in 2 hours. That would be a really evenly matched pair of teams right there.
Yes, it would be.
Okay, so Cynthia's asking, if you have 4 3-0 players on a 3-5 team, 1 player has not played in a match, can we move a player off a team and bring in another 3-0 player if they have not played on a 3-5 team?
Yes. You're not going to make friends. I mean, they may get very upset with you, but yeah, you can, if they haven't played a match, you can say, sorry, we want a better 3-0 player.
Oh, travel issues. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that happens. Yep. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, as long as they haven't played a match. Once you play a match for a team, you are sort of stuck on that team. So the results of that team, you're tied to the match, and the match is tied to the team. So you can't move them off.
Did you see that question, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just reading that.
Okay.
No, Tori, yeah, that is correct. Team A doesn't win, even though they won the set and the other team hasn't. So it's a tie. A timed match ending is always an imperfect solution. We know that. But under the present system, in actual fact, Team A could lose the match, because we count the games. If the first set was close and the second set wasn't that close, Team A could have won the first set but lose the match. In other words, Team B could win the match without having won a complete set. So we understand that, Team A is the one who won the completed set, but it ends up as a tie. But at least that is better than the situation that you actually have now. But a time match ending that cuts a match short is always going to be an imperfect solution. So we just try to find something that's as fair as we can get to. Yeah, you need more time to play. Well, okay, actually, that does raise one good point. We have not changed the rule that, the 2-hour time limit is the default situation if you haven't agreed something different. If court by court, you decide you would like to play the match out and the court is available and the captains agree, so let's just say that again. It's the captains must agree and all 4 or all 2 players on the court must agree up front, and the court is available, then you can play the match out. We didn't change that rule. So, but most of the time, yeah, you need more time to play, but unfortunately, at the end of 2 hours, they're bringing a coaching class on, or there's another match. I know at my own club, particularly say on a Sunday, we're just back to back with 2-hour matches.
Listen, Eastern Mass does 1.5-hour matches, so
Yeah,
consider yourself lucky you get 2. All right, does anybody have any other questions about anything at all? Especially you guys, if you're new and you have questions, chances are somebody else has the same question. So please ask away. We want to make sure that you guys are really comfortable going into the season and know, as much as possible.
I'm sorry, can I just, Tori just came back with one more question. So if team B is 3-1 up, they win the match. Let me just clarify. If you're talking about in the second set, it would depend on who won the first set. If team A won the first set, but team B is up 3-1 in the second set, they win the set and therefore the match is tied. If team B won the first set and they're 3-1 up in the second set, yes, they win the match. Is that clear?
So in that scenario, team A wins the first set, whatever the score, 6-4. Team B is up 3-1 in a second, then that's a tie.
That is a tie because we regard it as a set each.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've clarified. But read through the sheet. You'll find it's a pretty easy read compared to what it used to be, and you'll quickly realize how the scenarios fit in.
All right, I think we covered everything, and Serena's up 5-4 and serving in the first set, so you're now up to date.
All right.
And I think that's all I have. And if you guys have any questions, drop me a note. But the email you got with all the attachments should really answer most of the housekeeping stuff that you may have with dates and so on, and rules and whatnot. All
Thanks,
right.
Susan.
You guys have a great night, and thank you so much. You don't need me, right, Christy? After this, we can just jump off.
Yep, just jump off. I'm going to send the recording out as soon as I get it done, probably in the morning. All right.
Bye.
All right, thank you, everybody.